In the boxing gym, this blonde guy was a national professional athlete. His moves were so vicious and deadly that the sparring partners here were all scared and ran away. Under the pressure from the blonde guy, the trainer immediately pointed at a cleaner. Seeing this, the blonde guy showed disdain. He kept provoking whether a lowly cleaner would dare to step onto the ring. The cleaner stood still for 3 seconds, then stepped forward. The trainer threw protective gear to the guy, but he only took his gloves and threw away his hat. Seeing this, the blonde guy immediately rushed in to attack continuously. He was excited because it had been a long time since anyone had let him hit them. At first, this guy only raised his hands to defend, but when he discovered his opponent's weakness, he immediately swung his fist directly at the blonde guy. The whole gym became silent, waiting to see who would win. Suddenly, the blonde guy screamed in pain. His arm had been broken by the guy. The boss here saw this and immediately scolded the young man. Then he told the coach to fire the young man immediately for daring to injure his player. Although the young man did nothing wrong, he still endured it because he did not want to cause more trouble. But few people know that this seemingly weak young man actually had a terrible past when he went to jail and was brutally beaten. Everything started when Wu Sol was still in school. He was a gentle, good-natured, and studious model student. Wu Sol lived a closed life, but everyone respected him. Until one day, a new student named Seok Chan appeared. The teacher introduced him as the national school boxing champion. This made the whole class admire him. Only Wu Sol felt worried about something. As soon as the teacher left the classroom, Seok Chan started a fight with some stubborn kids in the class to establish his position as the boss. Then he immediately turned to beat Wu Sol. The class president came to stop him, but Seok Chan turned around and slapped him. Wu Sol begged Seok Chan to stop beating him, but he continued to beat Wu Sol continuously. It turned out that Wu Sol had been bullied by Seok Chan for 3 years in middle school, so Wu Sol was afraid of him. When Wu Sol collapsed on the floor and gradually lost consciousness, he saw a pen on the ground. Wu Sol instinctively picked up the pen to fight back. However, Seok Chan still looked down on Wu Sol and challenged Wu Sol to hit him. Unexpectedly, Wu Sol went crazy and stabbed him in the eye. The whole class was extremely surprised and scared. Seok Chan covered his face and cried in pain. Because Wu Sol caused permanent damage to Seok Chan, Wu Sol's actions were not considered self-defense. Wu Sol was sentenced to 3 years in prison for intentional injury. In the sorrowful cry of the mother, the bright future of a good student had disappeared since that day. On the bus escorting them to the reformatory, for some reason, there was a person sitting in the last row, but everyone avoided him. Wu Sol's seat was taken by someone else, so he had to sit next to that scary guy. As soon as Wu Sol saw the man turn to look at him, he immediately turned away in fear. When they arrived at the reformatory, their belongings were confiscated and they had to put on prisoner uniforms. Hun Min, who had just fought for a seat on the bus with Wu Sol, suddenly turned around and asked Wu Sol what his crime was. When Hyun Min heard Wu Sol answer that it was an attempted murder, he was immediately afraid and asked Wu Sol to forgive what happened earlier, but Hun Min said that his crime was almost the same. When Hyun Min introduced themselves to the seniors in the room, everyone found out that he was actually here for petty theft. Wu Sol and Hyun Min were taught the rules of survival in prison by the buzzcut guy. Here, power is arranged in a hierarchy, and fists are the only thing that determines a person's rank. If they don't know how to fight, they have to stay quiet. Try not to let others know about their existence if possible. The prison is divided into 2 factions. One is Sanghyub's newly formed team. Sanghyub is a former national judo athlete. The other faction is Won Jun, who has a muscular body. There is also another person named Sung Yong. He is short and small, but his legs are very strong. This prison is no different from a miniature society. Everyone wants to be the leader by any means. Recently, Won Jun and Sung Yong collaborated on a plan. They acted like they were beaten by Sanghyub to get a pack of cigarettes. So Sanghyub was locked in solitary confinement, while Won Jun and Sung Yong were free to act as the big brother. But there was a character who did not belong to any faction, and no one dared to approach. Sometimes the 3 of them together could not fight him, and that was Do Hyun, who sat next to Wu Sol on the bus earlier. It turned out that Do Hyun used to be famous in the Korean martial arts industry. He was the youngest MMA champion in the world. That fateful day, Do Hyun had just stepped out of the ring with the prestigious medal when he called home happily to talk to his mother and younger sister. Then he promised to celebrate with his family that night when he came home, but as soon as Do Hyun opened the door, he immediately fell into despair. The birthday cake was still on the table and the whole house was covered in blood. Do Hyun panicked and rushed to find his mother and younger sister. He was stunned to see his mother and younger sister lying motionless in a pool of blood. His younger sister only had time to whisper to him one last time. At that moment, someone suddenly strangled him from behind. In a split second, Do Hyun broke the first guy's leg. Seeing his mother lying in a pool of blood, blood made Do-hyun go crazy and punched the second guy's face. Suddenly, the third guy stabbed Do-hyun from behind. Do-hyun ignored the wound and turned around to punch this guy. Each punch seemed to mourn for his dead mother and younger sister. As a result, all three robbers died on the spot. Do-hyun was convicted of murder. Back to the present, the two big brothers were playing soccer like they were fighting, causing the two subordinates to be so painful that they couldn't stand up. So, Woo-sol and Hyun-min were called onto the field to complete the formation. After just a few minutes, the two big brothers struggled with each other, causing the ball to fall to Woo-sol's feet. Woo-sol carelessly kicked the ball straight into the groin of big brother Won-jun. Immediately, Woo-sol was dragged to a secret corner by Won-jun's subordinates to be punished. Woo-sol's memories of the days he was bullied by Sok-chan appeared in his head, memories that he just wanted to erase from his mind. But at this moment, Woo-sol caught a familiar figure, Do-hyun, the famous martial artist, passing by them. Woo-sol suddenly escaped and rushed towards Do-hyun and knelt down, begging Do-hyun to save him. Do-hyun saw Woo-sol's pleading eyes and immediately told Won-jun and his group to stop here. Won-jun angrily cursed Do-hyun, saying that he was just a murderer. Don't stand here and act like a hero. As soon as he finished speaking, Won-jun rushed up to hit Do-hyun, but Do-hyun dodged and returned a warning blow to Won-jun. On the second blow, Do-hyun knocked Won-jun unconscious on the spot. Woo-sol was surprised to see Do-hyun's overwhelming strength, but from that day on, Won-jun officially blacklisted Woo-sol. Won-jun considered Woo-sol as prey that he could hit at any time. Hyun-min sitting next to him could only shake his head in fear. Hyun-min advised Woo-sol to run out and beg Won-jun for his life. Then one day Woo-sol had a visitor. Unexpectedly, it was Sok-chan. Now his right eye is permanently blind, his studies are unfinished, and his boxing career is also lost. Woo-sol trembles and apologizes to Sok-chan, but Sok-chan's eyes are still cold and says, "I will wait for the day you get out of prison. At that time, I will torture you every day." Ignoring Woo-sol's tears and apologies, Sok-chan just mumbles that he cannot forgive and then turns away and leaves. In prison, Woo-sol was bullied by the boss. When he got out of prison, there was an enemy waiting for him. Woo-sol was scared all night long and couldn't sleep. In this prison, there is an unspoken rule that everyone must give a box of milk to the boss every day to show their loyalty. Woo-sol brought his milk to Do-hyun, but when Do-hyun asked what happened, Woo-sol was so scared that he couldn't say anything. The next day, Woo-sol brought milk to Do-hyun again, but was refused. Do-hyun told Woo-sol not to leave things here anymore. Woo-sol ran after him and gathered up all his courage to ask Do-hyun to teach him martial arts. Woo-sol also wanted to become a strong person like Do-hyun. Do-hyun refused immediately because he was afraid that Woo-sol would seek revenge and commit crimes. But Woo-sol explained that he just wanted to have a peaceful life. Before, he just wanted to run away because he didn't want to be beaten. At that time, Woo-sol only knew how to bow his head and submit to the bullies. He often blamed himself for being too poor and useless. He thought that maybe his existence was a mistake. But now Woo-sol didn't want to run away anymore. Woo-sol's honest words moved Do-hyun. Do-hyun agreed to teach Woo-sol martial arts, but on one condition: Woo-sol had to run 100 laps around the field in 40 minutes. If Woo-sol could do it, Do-hyun would teach Woo-sol martial arts. Woo-sol rarely practiced, so he could barely breathe after running for a while. He was dizzy and staggered as if he was about to fall. By the 50th lap, Woo-sol was completely exhausted, but the painful memories gave Woo-sol more willpower. Woo-sol tried to endure and ran to the 70th lap before collapsing. Woo-sol was so tired that he vomited continuously on the ground. He really wanted to give up, but the memories of Woo-sol being bullied appeared in his mind again. Woo-sol remembered the time when Sok-chan held him by the neck and didn't let him go to the bathroom. When Woo-sol couldn't take it anymore, he got scared and peed his pants in front of the whole class. Sok-chan also forced Woo-sol to lick what he had just peed. Woo-sol tried to stand up again, even though his limbs were exhausted. The 40 minutes were up, but when the enemy's face appeared in Woo-sol's mind, his legs automatically rushed forward. His body seemed to be controlled by the resentment of the past. Woo-sol passed the last lap before collapsing in Do-hyun's arms. Later, thanks to the close relationship between Do-hyun and the prison warden, Woo-sol was transferred to the same room as Do-hyun. When they met, Do-hyun made Woo-sol do a physical test, but when Do-hyun saw Woo-sol's incorrect push-ups, he sighed in frustration. Woo-sol's physical performance was truly disastrous. He did 21 push-ups, 32 sit-ups, and couldn't do a single pull-up. So Do-hyun made Woo-sol increase his daily push-up by 1 from tomorrow. If Woo-sol couldn't do it, he would pack his backpack and go back to his old room. Woo-sol gritted his teeth and tried his best to pull up the bar, and finally he completed 1 pull-up. Thus, Woo-sol's grueling training officially began. In the early days, he collapsed after only a few push-ups. He had no strength in punching and kicking, but under Do-hyun's strict instruction, Woo-sol practiced tirelessly every day. Regardless of the weather, Woo-sol's punches gradually gained strength. His kicks on the punching bag became more accurate. Do-hun also encouraged Woo-sol to eat more because eating was also training. At first, the inmates who watched Woo-sol practice sneered at him, but soon Woo-sol's muscles began to appear. His arms and legs became much stronger. His fists now had strength and speed. Do-hun immediately upgraded his punch-taking exercises. Each punch and each fall was a step forward. Gradually, the weak Woo-sol transformed into a warrior. At night, when the lights were turned off while he was running in prison, Woo-sol continued to practice diligently. When Woo-sol finished 1,000 punches, he turned around and saw that Do-hyun had fallen asleep. Woo-sol woke Do-hyun up and told that he was done practicing, but Do-hyun didn't see it, so it didn't count. Do-hun made Woo-sol start over. Meanwhile, Seok-chan was wandering around the street when the car behind him honked loudly, but he didn't bother to get out of the way. The gangsters in the car were annoyed and cursed a few times. Seok-chan didn't say anything, but rushed forward and kicked the rearview mirror. The other two guys got angry and wanted to beat Seok-chan, but Seok-chan beat them so much that they couldn't stand up. The gang boss Tae-sik happened to witness Seok-chan's amazing fight, so he invited Seok-chan to work for him. But Seok-chan refused. When he discovered that Seok-chan's right eye was blind, Tae-sik said that he'd hit the left side of Seok-chan's face when he counted to 3, and he did. With just one hit, he knocked Seok-chan to the ground. He once again wanted Seok-chan to join his side, and he promised to help Seok-chan become stronger than he was now. In prison, Woo-sol was studying and doing squats. Hun-min went to ask Woo-sol if he was training to fight Won-jun. Woo-sol denied it and replied that he just wanted to train to get stronger. But Hyun-min brought bad news that Do-hyun was about to be transferred to a prison. It turned out that after the prisoner turned 23, they had to go to an adult prison. Do-hyun only told Woo-sol to train harder because he didn't have much time left. That afternoon, Woo-sol saw Hun-min being bullied, so he ran in to stop him. The other guys wanted to beat Woo-sol up, but they didn't expect Woo-sol to be different from before. Even so, Woo-sol only did enough to save his friend. Later, Woo-sol was called to the carpentry workshop by Won-jun's subordinates. Woo-sol confronted Won-jun. Woo-sol patiently apologized for hitting Won-jun's subordinates. Woo-sol explained that the guy hit my friend first, but Won-jun didn't listen and started hitting Woo-sol. But on the second punch, Woo-sol unexpectedly dodged and then returned the punch to Won-jun's face. So a battle began, right in the middle of the wood workshop. Won-jun was really strong. Every punch of his was like a sledgehammer hitting Woo-sol's face and stomach. Then he threw Woo-sol to the floor, causing excruciating pain. But Woo-sol did not surrender and tried to stand up and continue fighting. He gradually got into the rhythm and kicked Won-jun in the head, but Won-jun was unharmed. Then Won-jun grabbed Woo-sol and threw him down like a punching bag. Won-jun was getting more and more aggressive. While Woo-sol's counterattacks were not strong enough, Woo-sol was pushed against the wall and punched a few times in the face. Woo-sol still staggered trying to stand up and accepted a punch in the face to catch Won-jun. Then Woo-sol gathered all his strength and headbutted Won-jun straight in the face, causing him to collapse. Without wasting a second, Woo-sol rushed in to fight back against Won-jun. Just then, Do-hun suddenly appeared to stop Woo-sol. Do-hun's eyes were determined as if to tell Woo-sol that everything was enough. Elsewhere, Seok-chan had now become a mercenary. He was now a loyal subordinate of the boss Tae-sik. After Woo-sol defeated the boss Won-jun, he continued to train diligently every day under Do-hyun's strict supervision. Today, Woo-sol ate better than usual, and he even got to spar with Do-hyun. But it was clear that Woo-sol had not given it his all, so Do-hun got annoyed and said that when he fought, he had to fight to the end. However, the next time, Woo-sol's fist still stopped in front of Do-hyun. Do-hyun advised Woo-sol not to be so soft-hearted because when he thought he was about to win and relaxed, that was when he was beaten. That was also Woo-sol and Do-hyun's last training session. Do-hyun was about to be transferred to an adult detention center. Do-hyun praised Woo-sol's strongest ability as his endurance and ability to endure dry training. Do-hun asked Woo-sol if he knew sharks. Sharks don't have swim bladders, so they just need to stop swimming for a bit to sink. Do-hyun advised Woo-sol to live like a shark and never stop swimming. The two just exchanged a small smile and said goodbye. After Do-hyun left, Woo-sol continued to train. Woo-sol quietly tried harder every day like a small shark, learning how not to sink. The guy in the same prison as Woo-sol had just been released. Now he was Seok-chan's subordinate. That guy kept telling stories about Woo-sol being trained by Do-hun to become a shark. He thought Seok-chan would be angry when he heard that, but Seok-chan just curled his lips and told the guy to continue. At this time, Woo-sol was challenged by Sun-young. Whoever lost would have to obey the winner for the rest of his prison life. Woo-sol didn't care about status. Woo-sol was ready to fight if Sun-young stopped bullying the weak, but Sun-young didn't agree and kicked Woo-sol, then gave Woo-sol 5 more days to think. As soon as Woo-sol stepped into his old cell, he met Sun-hee. Hyo, who had just been released from solitary confinement. Sang Hyob asked Woo Sol if he wanted to take his place. Woo Sol replied that he wasn't interested. Hearing that, Sang Hyob was very surprised because the prisoners rumored that Woo Sol was crazy about fighting. 5 days passed, and the fight with Sun Young was inevitable. At this moment, Sok Chan came to find Woo Sol again. Sok Chan threatened and twisted the fingers of the subordinate sitting behind him. Sok Chan said that he was looking forward to the day Woo Sol was released from prison. But this time, Woo Sol didn't shake his hands anymore. Woo Sol didn't dodge or bow his head. While waiting, Sun Young thought that Woo Sol wouldn't dare to come, so he turned to tease Sang Hyob. But Sang Hyob told Sun Young why keep fighting. Even if they were trash before, they can't live like trash forever. Before Sun Hyob could finish speaking, Woo Sol appeared. Without saying much, Sun Young rushed in to attack first. This guy had nimble legs. He continuously used his legs to hit Woo Sol, who could only defend. Woo Sol took the opportunity to grab his leg and kick him, causing him to fall backwards. Then Woo Sol immediately pressed him down and punched him. Unexpectedly, Sun Young counterattacked. Sun Young picked Woo Sol up and threw him to the ground. Then Sun Young kicked Woo Sol again in the face. Everyone thought it was over, but Woo Sol staggered to his feet. In terms of fighting skills, Woo Sol couldn't be called a master, but in return, he had a rare ability to endure blows. Woo Sol blocked Sun Young's kick. Then Woo Sol punched Sun Young's thighs repeatedly. Sun Young was locked in his legs and couldn't do anything, so he cried out in pain. Finally, Woo Sol jumped up and strangled Sun Young. His legs were locked so tightly that Sun Young couldn't escape. Everyone watching was terrified because they were afraid of a murder. Only when the warden appeared did Woo Sol let go. As a result, Woo Sol was thrown into solitary confinement, but he kept training because his real fight was still ahead. After that battle, the big brothers in the camp realized that Woo Sol was gradually becoming a real shark. If they wanted to live peacefully with Woo Sol, it was best if they didn't cause trouble. So there were no more fights. The prison suddenly became strangely peaceful. Hyun Min respected Woo Sol more and more because everyone thought Woo Sol would lose, but Woo Sol persevered until the end and didn't give up. Sung Young and Won Jun were now as close to Woo Sol as brothers. Thanks to his good rehabilitation, Woo Sol was released from prison early. Woo Sol asked the warden for permission to visit the place where he trained with Master Do Hyun for the last time. Woo Sol silently thanked Do Hyun and the unforgettable days here. Woo Sol walked out of the prison in his school uniform. Woo Sol had not taken many steps when his old enemy appeared. The life and death battle between Woo Sol and Sok Chan had begun. As soon as it started, Woo Sol was punched like a punching bag. Now Sok Chan was a powerful thug. Sok Chan beat Woo Sol while provoking him, saying that your mother had come to me to beg for forgiveness like a dog. When Woo Sol returned the first punch, Sok Chan went crazy and punched Woo Sol repeatedly. Then Sok Chan finished Woo Sol off with a knee and a punch with all his strength. But when Woo Sol collapsed, he remembered what Do Hyun said that sharks never stop swimming. So Woo Sol stood up and rushed to hit Sok Chan again. Woo Sol threw a spiral punch. That was the self-defense technique that Do Hyun had taught Woo Sol. Sok Chan's left eye lost its sight after being hit by that punch. He frantically rushed forward but was kicked down by Woo Sol. At this point, both of them were out of energy. The match became a contest to see who could endure more. The two of them punched back and forth non-stop. Sok Chan's willpower was no match for Woo Sol. In the end, Sok Chan had no choice but to surrender. Woo Sol quietly left, leaving Sok Chan behind in anger. After recovering, the first thing Woo Sol did was to visit Do Hyun in prison. Do Hyun was very happy to see his student, but Woo Sol asked Do Hyun if he had never seen a shark with his own eyes. Do Hyun hesitantly replied that he had seen it on TV. Woo Sol had gone to the aquarium to see sharks, so Woo Sol discovered that sharks hardly swam back and forth at all. Do Hyun had once said that sharks swim continuously. Even when they sleep, they still swim back and forth. But Woo Sol found that he rested well when he was resting. Do Hyun was embarrassed. At this moment, he could only laugh at his mistake. 6 months had passed since the fight with Sok Chan. Woo Sol's life after being released from prison was not easy. People with criminal records like him were often looked at with unfriendly eyes. Woo Sol and his friends in prison had to rely on each other to survive. Woo Sol still kept practicing. Sung Young ran a pizza business. Won Jun worked as a construction worker while studying for his final exam, aiming to go to university. Sang Hyob still missed his old job, so he went back to the gym. Everyone promised each other that even though they were criminals, they would never give up their passion. They would put the past behind them and move forward together. Woo Sol went to the prison to visit Do Hyun. Woo Sol boasted that he had just been hired to work at the gym. Even though Woo Sol was just a cleaner, he was able to stay in the dormitory, which saved him money on rent. Woo Sol is training hard with the dream of becoming becoming a boxer. Although Wu Sol knows it's not easy, sharks never stop swimming. Du Hyun is a bit worried because Wu Sol is still too young. Moreover, Wu Sol has a grudge against Sok Chan, a gangster, so he has to be more careful. Du Hyun advises Wu Sol not to let his emotions overwhelm his reason. Du Hyun will cheer for Wu Sol. Back at the gym, Wu Sol always tries to serve the difficult boxers. The blonde guy sparred so savagely that even the coach can't stand it. Because the blonde guy kept hitting like he wanted to kill someone, all the opponents he trained with ran away. The coach helplessly pointed at Wu Sol. Then the coach told him to spar with the blonde guy. The blonde guy disdainfully thought Wu Sol was a human punching bag, but in the end, Wu Sol broke his arm. Tonight the blonde guy has another match, so the boss angrily scolded Wu Sol. Then he told Sang Hyub to fire Wu Sol immediately. It turns out that the blonde guy is participating in an illegal fighting ring called Fog. The matches are live streamed on a private app and allow viewers to bet. Only a few VIPs are invited to watch live. The first match has ended, and tonight's official match is about to take place with the #1 fighter of Fog, the blonde guy. The challenger is the muscular Jung Hyun, but the blonde guy hurt his hand and disappeared. The staff quickly ran to inform the boss that the system announced that a special fighter will replace the blonde guy in this match. Everyone bet again from the beginning. Before announcing the new fighter, the odds will be paid 10 times regardless of the bet. Jung Hyun started to tremble because he didn't know who the opponent would be. Finally, the mysterious fighter revealed himself. Unexpectedly, it was Tae-sik, the boss of this fighting ring, and also the big brother who recruited Sok Chan. It seemed that the chairman was too strong, so the people who bet on Jung Hyun became worried. At this time, the system announced a special rule to ensure fairness. Jung Hyun only needed to endure 30 seconds to win. However, most of the bets were still placed on Chairman Tae-sik. Finally, Tae-sik stepped out. He even comforted Jung Hyun that it was just a fun match. As soon as the match started, Jung Hyun received a punch to the ribs. This was followed by 2 360-degree kicks, and Tae-sik finished it off with a sledgehammer hook. Jung Hyun was completely defeated in just 10 seconds, but Tae-sik did not stop because there were still 20 seconds left. After saying that, Tae-sik brutally broke Jung Hyun's leg. The next morning, Wu Sol happened to witness Won Jun trying to give money to a man on crutches, only to have it pushed back at him with visible anger. It turned out that before going to prison, Won Jun worked as a debt collector. Once, Won Jun chased a debtor, causing him to jump and break his leg. Won Jun regretfully went to find the debtor to apologize, but he couldn't make the leg of this person as good as before. Today, Wu Sol and the others had an appointment. Only Sang Hyub was busy, so he didn't come. Won Jun was depressed, but thanks to Wu Sol's optimism, he felt better. Sung Yong and Won Jun had an argument as soon as they met. The reason was that Won Jun went to the restaurant all day without paying Sung Yong. While they were arguing, Sung Yong revealed that Won Jun had a very pretty younger sister. Then the two asked Wu Sol to judge who was more handsome. Wu Sol didn't know what to do when teacher Ji Hee appeared. This girl was Wu Sol's childhood friend. She was now tutoring Won Jun for his graduation exam. While the other two were still talking, she drank all her glasses in one gulp, so the four of them happily raised their glasses together. Later, Sung Yong discovered that Wu Sol was looking at Ji Hee with thoughtful eyes. At this moment, Tae-sik braked the car suddenly, then arrogantly crossed the street and walked straight to Sung Yong's shop. Tae-sik came to find Wu Sol and asked to fight him. 3 hours ago, Tae-sik sent his subordinates to capture the blonde guy, the lover, and the manager onto a boat. When Tae-sik arrived on the canoe, the 3 people were already kneeling. Everyone's faces showed fear. The blonde guy was beaten up. As soon as they saw the boss, the 3 people trembled with fear. Cannon was Tae-sik's most trusted subordinate. Cannon reported that this guy ran away because his wrist was injured and he couldn't fight. Tae-sik asked the blonde guy who did that to his wrist. The blonde guy replied that it was a cleaner named Wu Sol at the gym. Tae-sik was surprised because that person wasn't a fighter but a janitor. Tae-sik told the blonde guy not to worry because he had already dealt with today's fight. The blonde guy happily promised that he wouldn't do that again next time, but Tae-sik said there would be no next time. Then Tae-sik asked the blonde who he would trust more between the two. If he had to give his life, who would the blonde give it to? His lover or his manager? The blonde chose the manager because they were brothers. The manager stood behind him in panic and said they were just cousins. Tae-sik said that if the manager could keep mouth shut for 10 seconds without crying out, he would spare the blonde. As a result, in less than 5 seconds, the manager cried out miserably. The blonde panicked and begged for his life, but the 3 of them were still thrown into the river. His subordinate reported that the cleaner who injured the blonde was the one who had blinded Sok Chan. Tae-sik also knew that Sok Chan went to the prison to take revenge and was defeated, so he immediately went to see Wu Sol. Tae-sik immediately invited Wu Sol to his underground arena. Ji Hee had just finished work work when Woo Sol called. He told her to text him when she got home. Ji-hee teased him that Woo Sol was acting like he was her lover. At that moment, she saw a pregnant woman drop her bag, so she immediately ran to help. The woman saw this and asked Ji-hee to carry it to the car. At this time, the pregnant woman smoked again and asked her if she was Ji-hee. Before Ji-hee could understand what was going on, someone covered her mouth. He carried Ji-hee straight to the car of the mental hospital. Today, the club was closed for the day, so Woo Sol took the opportunity to practice with Sang-hyub. Won-jun and Sun-young also went to watch. It turned out that Woo Sol and Sang-hyub had been practicing for more than an hour. Won-jun and Sun-young lamented that Woo Sol had really grown up. It was thanks to him that Won-jun and Sun-young were able to live properly now. In the car, the pregnant woman named Shi-hun took off her fake pregnant belly and ordered her subordinate to tie up Ji-hee's legs. Ji-hee grabbed the fire extinguisher and hit him in the face before rushing to open the door. Unfortunately, before Ji-hee could escape, Shi-hun knocked her unconscious. After finishing practice, Woo Sol saw Won-jun and Sun-young waiting for him. So Woo Sol asked why the two were here. Could it be that Sun-young's shop had gone bankrupt? Sun-young was angry because Woo Sol only said bad things. Before he could finish his sentence, Sang-hyub ran over to ask how Sun-young's shop was. At that moment, Woo Sol received a call from Ji-hee. When Woo Sol turned on the screen, he could only hear Ji-hee's panicked voice screaming. Woo Sol quickly called back, but no one answered. Woo Sol immediately remembered the conversation with the boss Tae-sik. He wanted Woo Sol to work for him. If Woo Sol wanted to continue his sports career, with his criminal record, only Tae-sik could help him. Woo Sol firmly replied that he was not interested and that he would decide his own life. A bald guy scolded Tae-sik for driving stupidly. The bald guy was immediately knocked out by Tae-sik. Tae-sik saw Ji-hee panicking and worrying about the bald guy, so he smirked and asked her if she was Woo Sol's girlfriend. Woo Sol guessed that Tae-sik had kidnapped Ji-hee. Woo Sol was about to rush to find him, but was stopped by Won-jun. Won-jun advised Woo Sol to calm down, because if he went alone now, he would fall into Tae-sik's trap. Sun-young called the police, but they said they didn't have enough information so they couldn't intervene. Suddenly, Woo Sol's phone received a text message with only a few words, "to the construction site," so the whole group rushed to the construction site in Sun-young's sales truck. The whole group split up to look for Ji-hee, but they couldn't find her. Suddenly, Woo Sol picked up Ji-hee's car key in a puddle of water. Woo Sol called back and heard the bell ringing somewhere from inside the abandoned house. Without thinking, Woo Sol rushed in. At this time, Ji-hee was being watched by two strong men. Seeing Ji-hee fiercely resisting one of them who was about to hit her, Woo Sol appeared. Woo Sol rushed over and defeated both strong men. Woo Sol quickly untied Ji-hee, but she told him to run away quickly. Before Woo Sol could understand what was happening, a group of thugs holding sticks came in. The last person was Shi-hyun. She signaled her subordinates to rush forward. Then she took out her phone to report to the boss, but out of the four of them, only two were seen. The other two were not seen. Tae-sik ordered that it was enough to catch three. Woo Sol's group was dragged into the car by the hood. Sun-young and Sang-hyub only had time to see the convoy speed away. The two of them immediately got in the car and chased after them. Woo Sol's group was tortured with electric batons until they passed out. When he woke up, he found himself tied tightly to a chair. In front of him was the boss Tae-sik. The first thing he asked Tae-sik was where his friend was. Tae-sik didn't answer but politely asked about his health. Woo Sol impatiently asked where his friend was. Tae-sik immediately put a knife to Woo Sol's neck and asked him if he knew how they trained children in Africa to kill. They blindfolded the children and put guns in their hands and made them shoot randomly. Only when they opened their eyes and saw blood and dead bodies did they get scared. After that, they were as obedient as dogs. Tae-sik wanted Woo Sol to try putting himself in the same situation as those children in Africa. Tae-sik wanted Woo Sol to choose who would die. Whoever he chose would die and the other would live. If it was too difficult, Woo Sol could choose whichever one he wanted to save. Woo Sol begged Tae-sik that they had nothing to do with each other, so please let them go. At that moment, Tae-sik was busy, so he handed it over to Shi-hun. Shi-hun scared Woo Sol for fun and told the subordinates to film it. Shi-hun gave Woo Sol exactly 10 seconds to think and then started counting down. Woo Sol struggled madly and fell to the floor. No matter how he begged, it was useless. If they didn't choose, both of them would die. He was scared and asked Ji-hee what he should do. 10 seconds were up. Shi-hun coldly stabbed Won-jun straight in the stomach. Shi-hun told Woo Sol to remember this moment. After saying that, she gritted her teeth and stabbed Won-jun again. Unexpectedly, the first stab accidentally tore the rope. Won-jun blocked the second stab and threw Shi-hun to the floor. The subordinate who rushed in was also defeated by Won-jun. At this time, Shi-hun rushed forward with a knife, but Won-jun grabbed the knife. Then Won-jun hit Shi-hun, sending him flying far away and fainting on the spot. After that, Won-jun immediately united Ji-hee Ji-hee and Woo-sol. Woo-sol was worried about Won-jun's wound, but he replied that one stab wouldn't be difficult for him. The three of them ran away together, but their lair was like a maze, and their subordinates were guarding everywhere. Shihan woke up and pressed the alarm to order the three of them to be captured, so the three of them were surrounded by thugs. Woo-sol and Won-jun rushed out to fight to make a way to escape, but there were too many of them, so the two of them gradually became exhausted. Won-jun was punched repeatedly in the wound, and Woo-sol was strangled from behind. Luckily, Ji-hee rushed in to rescue them, so they could continue to escape. But before they could escape, another group appeared. Won-jun's wound was bleeding non-stop, but he still told Woo-sol to take Ji-hee away while he stayed to hold them back. He then broke an iron bar and decided to stay and fight the thugs. Woo-sol and Ji-hee had just gone down to the basement when they were blocked by a group of thugs. Luckily, Sung-young and Sun-hyo appeared in time to save them. The two of them rushed in and quickly defeated the thugs. After that, everyone hurried to find Won-jun. After they arrived, they saw that he had defeated all the others. It seemed that Won-jun was still alive. Everyone rushed to the car to break the siege and drove away. Only then did they realize that Won-jun's injuries were too severe and his blood was flowing non-stop. Won-jun took out a notebook with a list of his past victims and gave it to Woo-sol. Won-jun wanted Woo-sol to send them an apology on his behalf. Then he also wanted to apologize to Woo-sol. After saying that, Won-jun breathed his last in Woo-sol's arms. Woo-sol cried out in pain for Won-jun. A few days ago, Woo-sol accidentally saw Won-jun come to apologize to someone, but he was rejected. Woo-sol comforted him for a few sentences. Then Won-jun took out a notebook with a list of 31 people who needed to apologize. Won-jun wanted to sincerely apologize, but whether they forgave him or not was up to them. Woo-sol comforted Won-jun, so maybe they also needed time. Won-jun heard that and thanked Woo-sol. Thanks to Woo-sol, Won-jun became braver. Woo-sol heard that and teased Won-jun, but now everything is just a memory. Woo-sol stood in front of Won-jun's portrait and felt extremely regretful. Suddenly a girl rushed up and punched him in the head. She asked him if he was Woo-sol. Then she asked what Woo-sol was doing when Won-jun died. Why did her brother die and you guys were still alive? It turned out that this was Won-jun's younger sister Yeonjin. Woo-sol knelt down and apologized in extreme regret. Yeonjin stood in front of Won-jun's portrait, crying and scolding her brother for being a bastard. Woo-sol still couldn't forgive himself. Woo-sol told Sun-young that he shouldn't have refused. Woo-sol should have agreed to work for them. If he hadn't known Woo-sol, Won-jun wouldn't have died like this. Sun-young got angry when he heard Woo-sol crying like that. Sun-young said it wasn't Woo-sol's fault. Won-jun himself said that for the first time in his life, he felt like a human being thanks to Woo-sol. Won-jun studied for the college entrance exam and apologized to those he had bullied. Now that Woo-sol is like this, how can Won-jun rest in peace? Yeonjin stood nearby and heard everything. Perhaps she also understood the brotherly feelings between Won-jun and Woo-sol. Ji-hee was talking to her mother on the phone when a scarred man bumped into her. Feeling suspicious, she quietly followed him. It turned out that he had gone to see the police officer in charge of Won-jun's case. He threatened the police officer a few sentences and then forced the police officer to listen to Cannon's phone call, a loyal subordinate of boss Tae-sik. The two agreed to choose one person to take the blame for this case. In return, the police officer would receive a large sum of money. Ji-hee immediately reported it to Sung-young and Sun-hyo, so it was clear that the police were on Tae-sik's side. At that moment, Tae-sik's condolence flower stand arrived. Sun-young angrily smashed Tae-sik's flower stand. If they couldn't get the police, they would handle this themselves. After saying that, Sun-young intended to go find Tae-sik immediately. Sang-hyub couldn't stop him, so they started arguing loudly. At this point, Ji-hee had to yell at them before they stopped. Woo-sol flipped through Won-jun's notebook and stopped at the last page. It turned out that Woo-sol was also on the list that Won-jun wanted to apologize to. A few short lines, but enough to make Woo-sol cry. The apology said that Won-jun wanted them to be good brothers forever. It rained heavily the day he sent Won-jun off. Woo-sol clenched his fists and said goodbye, then gathered the whole team. Woo-sol wanted the ones who caused this to pay. But this time, everything had to be carefully calculated. Unexpectedly, Yeonjin also asked to join, but to join the team, she had to pass test. Unexpectedly, Yeonjin was able to easily defeat all three of them. It turned out that Yeonjin was also very good at fighting. Then the group looked at Won-jun's photo. They made up their minds that even if a big storm came, they would not stop. The first thing was to find evidence of Shihan stabbing Won-jun. Ji-hee suddenly remembered that Tae-sik had asked Shihan to film it, so there must be a place to keep that footage. So Yeonjin volunteered to pretend to be a delivery person. Yeonjin went into Tae-sik's lair. In Yeonjin's hand was a package that Sung-young had carefully attached a camera to, but it was difficult to get through the security gate, so everyone stuck the business card that Tae-sik gave Woo-sol on the package. package. The security guards thought it was Tae-sik's goods, so they didn't suspect anything. Woo-sol's group watched the camera while drawing a diagram of the building. The package was finally delivered to the broadcast room, where a guy wearing glasses was managing the camera system and live streaming on the app. He was curious, but didn't dare to open Tae-sik's package. As soon as they identified the target, Woo-sol's group immediately took action. Sung-yong drove straight into the building. They intentionally crashed into the barrier to attract attention. As expected, the subordinates discovered the car through the camera and immediately sent someone to check, but they only saw an empty car. Suddenly, the microwave in the car exploded. The fire alarm blared loudly. The jamming plan was successful. Meanwhile, the whole group had broken inside. The thugs were so numerous that the team was divided into two groups. Woo-sol and Sung-hyob were on one team. Sun-young and Yeon-jin were on the other team. One person took the hit and the other focused on defeating the opponent. The goal was to fight quickly and get away. Obviously, these subordinates were no match for the four of them, so they were quickly defeated. Next, Woo-sol went to find the broadcasting room, while the other three took care of the cleaning. The number of subordinates kept increasing, but the three of them were not afraid. Meanwhile, Woo-sol quickly found the broadcasting room according to the diagram. He grabbed the bespectacled man by the neck and forced him to open all the computer data, but the recording folder of that day had nothing. At this moment, Tae-sik was laughing triumphantly because everything was within his calculations. He had been monitoring Woo-sol's group's every move through the camera. Tae-sik ordered Shihun and Cannon to go down and check the situation. When Woo-sol returned, the group had defeated almost all the guards. Suddenly, Tae-sik turned on the tape from that day. From the time Woo-sol cried and begged them to when Shihun stabbed Won-jun. At that moment, Cannon brought a group of subordinates over. Tae-sik teased Woo-sol that if he wanted to get the footage, he could just come here and get it. The subordinates immediately made way for Woo-sol to enter the elevator alone. He agreed without hesitation because he knew clearly that what Tae-sik wanted was himself. After Woo-sol left, Cannon sent his subordinates to the parking lot to clean up. Cannon, Scarface, and Shihun would fight the intruders. Yeonjin recognized Shihun as the one who stabbed her brother, so Yeonjin punched Shihun immediately. Sang-hyob accepted Cannon as his opponent. The remaining pair were Sun-young and Scarface. Meanwhile, Woo-sol was taking off his armbands and preparing to fight Tae-sik. Tae-sik gave him two options. One was Woo-sol took the USB containing the video and left. The other was Woo-sol staying to fight him one-on-one to avenge Won-jun. Woo-sol decided to take the USB and leave, but Tae-sik did not give up so easily. Tae-sik wanted to use Woo-sol's family as a game like he did to Won-jun last time. Woo-sol turned around and asked Tae-sik why he did that. Tae-sik replied that the reason was because he found it funny. Woo-sol couldn't hold back anymore and immediately jumped into a fight with Tae-sik. At first, Tae-sik was fighting while deliberately playing around with Woo-sol, but when Tae-sik got serious, Woo-sol was continuously beaten very painfully. The fight below also became fierce. Shihun pulled out a knife and slashed Yeonjin's face. Yeonjin angrily kicked the knife away and grabbed Shihun's hair to hit her. Then she knocked Shihun down with a hook. Cannon and Sang-hyob were competing to see who was more resilient. Sung-young was careless and his leg was broken by the scarred man. Above, Tae-sik continuously beat Woo-sol. Tae-sik calmly drank some wine and then turned on the video again to provoke Woo-sol. Woo-sol angrily rushed in, but Tae-sik was just waiting for that. Tae-sik strangled Woo-sol and forced him to watch the scene where Won-jun was stabbed again. Woo-sol almost gave up, but at that moment, Woo-sol remembered Won-jun's indomitable spirit when he was seriously injured. Woo-sol woke up, struggled, and threw Tae-sik to the floor. Then Woo-sol continuously attacked. Woo-sol caught Tae-sik's leg, intending to break it, but Woo-sol unexpectedly let him go. Tae-sik took the opportunity to fight back against Woo-sol, but Woo-sol threw him to the floor and punched him repeatedly. Tae-sik struggled to escape, then rushed to punch Woo-sol again. This time Woo-sol circled around behind and threw Tae-sik to the stage, shattering the glass. Below, after Yeonjin defeated Shi-hyun, she jumped in to help Sung-young deal with Scarface, but she was no match for him, so he broke one of her arms. Luckily, Sung-young rushed to the rescue in time with a chokehold. Yeonjin took the opportunity to hit him repeatedly in the head. Meanwhile, Sang-hyob defeated Cannon. Despite their injuries, three of them completed their mission. Above, Tae-sik and Woo-sol still tried to get up. The two of them used all their strength but still refused to stop. Woo-sol locked Tae-sik's arm. Woo-sol refused to let go of Tae-sik. Despite his struggles, Woo-sol finally pinned Tae-sik to the floor. Then Woo-sol used all his strength to break Tae-sik's arm. Tae-sik screamed in pain. Tae-sik angrily rushed forward and tried to push Woo-sol out the window. Unexpectedly, Woo-sol grabbed the wall. While Taesik fell, Woo-sol tried his best to pull Taesik back. But Taesik laughed and wanted to let go. Woo-sol really wanted to avenge Wonjun, but he didn't want to become a murderer like Taesik, so Woo-sol used all his strength to pull Taesik up. Taesik threatened Woo-sol that you would regret not killing me, but Woo-sol replied that he was different from Taesik. Woo-sol walked away, leaving Taesik behind alone. Not long after, Taesik was arrested by the police. Taesik was accused of running an illegal sports betting establishment and was involved in the death of Wonjun and 3 people: the manager, the blonde, and the lover. Woo-sol followed Wonjun's notebook to find each victim to apologize on Wonjun's behalf. Some forgave him, some didn't. But anyway, Woo-sol fulfilled Wonjun's wish. Woo-sol carefully marked each person in the notebook. When he reached the last page, he saw his name and wrote the word forgive. At that moment, Woo-sol's close teammates appeared. They all smiled because everything was over. Woo-sol went to the prison to visit Do-hyun. Now Woo-sol knew what he wanted. Every time he threw a punch, Woo-sol felt like he was truly living, and he really liked that feeling. Woo-sol would become a cool fighter like Do-hyun, and at that moment he wanted to fight Do-hyun. Do-hyun smiled and replied that if he wanted to fight like him, Woo-sol would have to try twice as hard as he did now. Not long after, the World Championship for rookies was held. The whole Woo-sol group was dreaming about it. Like Wonjun, even though he knew he might not be forgiven, he still chose to apologize. Sometimes, even though we know we might not get everything we want, we still have to do it. Now Woo-sol is no longer fighting just to survive. He is fighting to see that he is truly alive. That is the entire content of the movie. Thank you everyone for watching. Goodbye, and see you again.